Hey soldiers, is the U.S. military in an irreversible decline? If that's the case, it spells the end of American economic dominance. If the U.S. military is in decline, and we're going to lay out some facts that support that assertion, of course it's going to hasten the decline of American economic influence and drastically decrease domestic prosperity. Now, for decades, global free trade has relied on American military dominance, particularly the U.S. Navy's ability to keep trade routes open. But three factors challenge that ability and threaten free markets the world over. Number one, the rise of China as a global military and economic power. Number two, the U.S. military's self-inflicted recruiting issues in every one of the branches. All 6 branches are undergoing severe recruiting issues: Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines, Coast Guard, and Space Force. Number 3, disastrous political moves that have, quite frankly, embarrassed the U.S. military on a global stage. You'll notice that 2 of those 3 are of our own making. Superpowers have a shelf life. They always have. They always will. 2 primary indicators of the death throes of an empire are an economy saddled with immense debt, coupled with a devalued currency, and a military in decline. The Heritage Foundation is out with a new report. The title of the report is 2023 Index of U.S. Military Strength. It provides an extremely honest and distressing analysis of the U.S. military's capabilities, capacity, and readiness. Now, this is coming from Zero Hedge. We're going to examine that report. But this is a problem. This is a big problem. It's been decades in the making, but in the last year or 2, we've seen it just explode. We've got a military that's more focused on social justice and being woke than it is, quite frankly, with killing people and breaking shit. That is the function of a military. Let's not delude ourselves. This isn't, some child's program here. This is an adult program that pays attention to adult facts. And if you're going to have a military, the purpose of that military is death and destruction. Let's just be honest about it. The Heritage Foundation report spells out in nearly 600 pages of painstaking detail how the U.S. military is rapidly losing or has already lost its technological advantages. It shows how there are not enough forces to defend American interests against a major adversary like China. And most importantly, the report concludes that the military is simply not ready. One of the reasons why the military is not ready, we just mentioned it a moment ago, if you're going to run around demonizing your country and saying that it's evil incarnate, then who would want to serve that, let alone potentially die for it, right? So when I was coming up, they had the slogan was "Be all that you can be" in the Army. And then they had the Navy for a while, had U.S. Navy, a global force for good. These were, evoked some feeling of patriotism, made you look within yourself and say, hey, I want to serve my country in some way, potentially. But now we've got even politicians who are bashing the country every chance they get. We've got a military saying to individuals who've decided that they don't want to take an unproven medication, a medication, by the way, that has since the corporation that developed the medication has since come out and said that the whole reason the military wants you to take it to prevent transmissibility, we didn't even test it for that. So we don't know what they're talking about. So you've got good men and women being pushed out of the military, experienced, highly skilled men and women being pushed out of the military because they decided to say, no, I don't want this medication. And people are looking at that and saying, you know what, I'm not sending my son, I'm not sending my daughter to serve that. Okay, you had the commercial for the U.S. Army that was roundly panned, where the young lady, she was talking about how she joined, but she didn't talk about the fact that, she learned a new skill or she felt very empowered by being able to take on the enemy with the new skills that she learned, or how these new skills were going to help her after her military career. No, she had a whole lot to say about social justice. And people were like, just not inspiring. That make me want to join. Now, what's going on has far-reaching implications. History has shown over and over again that once a superpower's veneer of invincibility is pierced, it rapidly loses its status. And that's even more true when another compelling power is on the rise, such as China. Now, if you look at popular media, the media will have you believe that the U.S. military routinely takes on aliens. If you look at the movies, and whips the aliens' behinds. Okay, Battle Los Angeles is one of my favorite movies. And I swear, that movie is nothing but a 2-hour recruiting commercial for the U.S. Marines. Go check it out. It's a good movie if you like sci-fi. But that's the perception of the U.S. military. The U.S. military can, whatever comes our way, we take it out. Another one is not such a good movie, but it's a fun, guilty pleasure. Battleship. It's another movie where aliens who are so technologically advanced, they get here from light years away and they cause a ruckus. And then once we figure out what's going on, the U.S. Navy basically hands them their ass. Okay, so that is slipping away, though, because of the realities that we've experienced of late. Like the U.S. military literally being chased out of Afghanistan in such an undignified way that it left Afghanis in what the hell just happened kind of stupor. A lot of people who trusted the mission were disappointed. Think about this. The world knows this about the U.S. military. We spent 20 years in Afghanistan, and now Afghanistan looks just like it does on September 10th of 2001. All the blood, all the treasure for nothing. And then we were chased out. So this is, damaging the brand big time. Loss of status as the world's sole superpower goes far beyond reputation and military conflict. The economic consequences are devastating. That's because dominant superpowers also tend to own the world's reserve currency. We talked about that again and again and again, how we're going to lose that status, and we're seeing chinks in the armor develop everywhere. So I predict that we're going to lose reserve currency status by 2035. And how that will work, how that will look, is the amount of reserves will slip below 50%. Reserves held globally of the US dollar will slip below 50%, and the amount of transactions that occur in dollars will decline by 10%, at least between here and mid 2030s, 2035. May happen sooner. A lot of people think it'll happen sooner. So don't expect the loss of dollar hegemony to look like some light switch where we just go back into the dark ages. No, it's not going to look like that. But one thing it will look like is that we will have to contract this empire. We will not be able to afford all of these far-flung military engagements that we have been involved in, and some would argue, and I think they would argue correctly, that have helped us to maintain our economic dominance. Being the world's reserve currency means that commercial and financial transactions around the world are conducted primarily in US dollars for now. For example, a Brazilian merchant and its supplier in India do business with each other in US dollars. Futures contracts for gold, copper, crude oil, etc. that are traded in foreign commodities exchanges like the Dubai Gold and Commodities Exchange are denominated in US dollars. The dollar is so dominant that when Airbus, which is a European aerospace company, when they sell jets to European airlines, they typically close those deals using US dollars instead of euros. And that tends to help make the dollar valuable because not only are more people using it, but they have to own it to use it. They have to own that dollar to use it. And so that tends to contract the supply of dollars when people do that. So supply and demand, it makes them a little bit more valuable than, say, the euro or the yen. A giant European company like Nestle, BP, and Volkswagen, those companies issue corporate bonds in not euros, but US dollars. All of these transactions mean that these companies, these governments, anybody doing business like that have to stockpile the dollars. And as we said, stockpiling the dollar, because it is the reserve currency, makes it, tends to help it make it more valuable. Now, because we've got that reserve currency status, again, in addition to these far-flung military engagements, other things we can do is we can run these outrageous budget deficits. Our debt is over, the debt and the deficit are two different things, but the debt is over $31 trillion. You can't do that without a reserve currency. Just ask Zimbabwe. We already talked about the fact that we can fund endless wars. Again, we were in Afghanistan for 20 years. During the pandemic, we paid people not to work. Okay, what a new phenomenon. And foreigners still hold US dollars and buy US government bonds. This privilege, Zero Head says, this privilege will dry up quickly if the US dollar loses its status as the dominant reserve currency. Absolutely, it will. So, military dominance, okay, we've shown how it's linked to our economic power and the U.S. position of prominence in the world today. History is replete with these types of stories. I mean, Rome, okay, more recently, Great Britain, they had the reserve currency. Not only did they have the reserve currency, but because of their military dominance, the slogan for the British Empire was, "The sun never sets on the British Empire." And the reason they said that, of course, is because no matter where you went in the world, you could find a British territory in full daylight. Okay, there was, as the world turned, there was never a place on this planet where you couldn't find a British territory. Okay, all over the world. They lost that dominance, and then they lost their reserve currency status. And we've seen Liz Truss do 6 weeks as a prime minister. Is Great Britain becoming ungovernable? We seeing the best days of the British Empire or the UK behind it? We might be seeing that about America too. Western-style democracies are having a crisis right now. And it's going to take a hell of a brand new flavor of leadership to pull us out of it. Problem is, qualified people don't want to run for office because the way the cabal has been structured to attack anyone who tries to run for office and actually affect lasting change. You doubt me? Run for office and say as your one of your main planks is going to be bringing back the gold standard, okay? Backing the U.S. dollar by something tangible, which is the case that we had before 1971, okay, when Nixon took us off the gold standard. Say that and see what happens to you. All right, guys, watch this video. Another sign of decline here is the fact that America is becoming a nation of renters. Owning a home is falling out of favor in a substantial percentage of the zip codes throughout the country. Watch that video, learn more, and also learn how you can insulate yourself and profit. Guys, I'll talk to you soon.